The Lithuanian Sun Queen, a Baltic folktale. There are stories that glow quietly, like embers living beneath ash, warm, patient, waiting for the right breath of wind to reveal their fire. Stories born from lands of deep forests and endless skies, where human memory meets the rhythms of nature. This tale is one of those embers. It begins long before borders were drawn, long before cities rose, in a Baltic world shaped by wind, water, and the slow passage of the sun across the sky. It speaks of hope and loss, of duty and longing, and of the ancient truth whispered through countless generations. The sun is not merely a celestial light, but a guardian whose patience holds the world together. Her name, in the old stories, was Sol, the Sun Queen, mother of warmth, weaver of dawns, protector of crops, shepherdess of days. Her light stirred the forests awake, coaxed flowers from frozen earth, and guided travelers across winding paths. To the people she watched over, she was not distant or unreachable. She was present, loving, steady, like a mother who never tires of lifting her children out of darkness. But even a queen of the sky has burdens unseen. Even a goddess made of light can feel the weight of shadows. The story begins on a morning when Sol's golden chariot rose from the edge of the world as it always did, its wheels cutting softly through the mist that crowned the horizon. Her horses, radiant and strong, pulled her toward the sky with the ease of routine, their hooves leaving shimmering sparks in their wake. Below, the forests breathed out a slow sigh of gratitude at her arrival. Dewdrops on grass blades caught her light, turning into tiny stars scattered across the ground. Birds lifted their voices in greeting, singing songs woven from generations of instinct. Yet to those who watched closely, something seemed different. Sol's glow, though still warm and bright, carried a subtle tremor, as though behind the light lived a quiet sorrow. She guided the chariot exactly as she always had, moving across the firmament with grace and certainty. But her eyes lingered on the world below a little longer each time. She watched children play near rivers, watched farmers lift their faces toward her warmth, watched seeds stirring beneath the soil. She loved them all, more deeply than they could ever know. Yet her heart, luminous and ancient, held a longing that no light could soften. For Sol had children of her own, daughters of dawn, sons of midday, radiant spirits who danced in the sky beside her. But one child had been lost, long ago, when the world was still young and magic ran through the land like groundwater. Sol had shared her light with the sea. From that union rose a son, so bright, so brave, so full of untamed energy that even the waves calmed themselves to watch him grow. His name was Soliukas, the little sun, a spark of day incarnate. He moved through the sky like a shooting star, laughing, learning, discovering the joy of existence. But joy can draw envy, and the world, even in its early youth, had its hungry shadows. Velnias, the ancient spirit of chaos and mischief, not wicked at his core, but impulsive, curious, and dangerously unbound, watched Soliukas with fascination. Velnias had wandered the world since its beginning, slipping between forests and cliffs, collecting secrets and treasures for no purpose other than the thrill of having them. He liked beautiful things, rare things, things that did not belong to him. And Soliukas, glowing so brightly and moving so freely, became one such treasure in Velnias's eyes. One evening, as the sky purples deepened and Sol prepared to descend toward her western palace, Soliukas lingered near the edge of her path. He had grown bold lately, eager to explore places where even sunlight struggled to reach. Sol had warned him. Her voice had trembled when she told him that not every corner of the world welcomed light. But like all young spirits, he believed himself invincible. That night, Velnias seized his chance. He called out in a voice like rustling leaves, disguising himself as a harmless wanderer. He told Soliukas of wonders hidden in the deep forests, glowing stones, enchanted wells, secrets whispered by roots older than the world. Soliukas, entranced and trusting, followed him. Deep into the woods they went, past trees so dense they blocked the sky, past marshes that murmured warnings, past stones carved with runes that pulsed faintly in the dark. Soliukas hesitated then, his light flickering with uncertainty. But Velnias soothed him with honeyed words, promising safety, beauty, marvels beyond imagination. At the heart of the forest stood an ancient oak so wide that 10 men with joined hands could not encircle it. Its roots dug deep into the world's foundations. Its branches twisted like the arms of slumbering giants. Velnias guided Soliukas beneath its canopy. There, the shadows swallowed them. By dawn, the little sun was gone. Saula Sevjid. She tore across the sky, ignoring the pathways carved for her chariot. Her horses whinnied in confusion. Her daughters of dawn wept, their tears falling as sudden morning rain. Her sons of daylight scattered to the corners of the world, trying desperately to catch a trace of Soliukas's glow. But the forest kept its secret well. Saul's grief was a quiet thing, but it dimmed the world. Days passed with unusual coolness. Crops grew slower. Animals moved cautiously, as though sensing the sun's sorrow. The people wondered why the summer felt so uncertain that year. They prayed for warmth, for abundance, for the Mother of Day to smile again. But Saul could not while her son remained lost. And so the tale carried on, year after year, until the day something changed. A single whisper reached Saul, soft as a child's breath, fragile as a dying ember. She heard it while traveling across the northern sky, the place where winds often carried the voices of wandering spirits. It was Soliukas, faint, weak, distant, but unmistakably him. That whisper pierced Saul's heart. It was the first true hope she had felt in countless seasons. She lifted her face toward the world, her light trembling not with sorrow now, but with fierce determination. Her son lived, and she would not rest until she found him. This is where the story truly begins, not with the loss, but with the rising flame of a mother's resolve. A resolve so powerful it could bend the pathways of the sky, stir the magic of the earth, and turn even the oldest forests inside out. After all, the sun is patient, but when someone steals her child, her patience becomes something else entirely, and the world was about to feel it. She guided her chariot across the northern sky with a new sharpness in her gaze, scanning every darkened valley, every swaying treetop, every patch of ancient woodland where secrets tended to hide. The whisper she had heard, Soliukas's faint call, had vanished almost as soon as it came, like a spark swallowed by wind. But it was enough. It was more than enough. For centuries, she had carried only grief. Now she carried purpose. Below her, the land responded. Rivers shimmered as her light grew stronger. Birds rose higher, circling as if offering their eyes to her search. Even the forests, usually stubborn and slow to change, seemed to shift subtly, their branches angling away from the sun as if in shame, as though they had sheltered the thief for too long. The Baltic world was alive with quiet tension, aware that the Mother of Day was hunting. But Saul was not reckless. She did not burn the forests or scorch the fields. Her nature was gentler, steadier. She believed in guidance more than punishment, illumination more than destruction. And so she sought allies, beginning with those who moved closest to the borders between light and shadow. The first she called upon was Vages, the wind. He came swiftly, curling through the air with a restless energy, stirring golden strands of her hair as he arrived beside her. The wind was old, older than many gods, yet carried himself with a kind of youthful impatience, as though he was always halfway to someplace else. "You summoned me, bright mother?" Vages asked, his voice chiming faintly like flutes carved from reeds. Saul's chariot glided quietly beneath him. "My child is alive," she said softly, but the emotional weight beneath her words was heavy. "Somewhere in the forests. Somewhere in the shadows where your currents brush, but do not linger." The wind hesitated. The forests, especially the oldest ones, had always been resistant to him. Their tangled roots and heavy canopies trapped air, holding whispers and old memories within. "Who took him?" Vages asked. Saul's glow dimmed slightly. "I believe it was Velnias." The name carried across the clouds with a chill. Velnias was unpredictable, as likely to help as to harm, as curious as a child, and as dangerous as a storm. The wind spun restlessly, uneasy. "I will search," Vages said at last, bowing his currents in respect. "I will slip into every hollow, every crevice. If Soliukas breathes, I will carry his breath back to you." Saul nodded gently, and Vages vanished, racing across the land in a gale of determination. But Saul knew she could not rely on the wind alone. The forests belonged to another power entirely, one whose roots reached deeper than any wind could travel. And so she turned her chariot toward the eastern horizon, where the oldest oaks grew and where a giant spirit slept beneath the earth. Her next call was for the Paklasniji Medzii, the obedient trees. Deep beneath the layers of bark, beneath sap and soil, lived the spirit of the world grove, a presence that had seen suns rise and fall thousands of times. Though not a single being, the trees shared one will, one memory, one deep consciousness that moved slowly through their roots like a dream. Saul rarely sought them. She respected their ancient pace. But today, her voice trembled with urgency. She let her light fall gently upon a sprawling oak whose trunk was thicker than a house. Its branches hunched like the shoulders of a sleeping guardian. Slowly, so slowly, the bark began to shiver. Lines deepened. A low groan rose from within as though the tree were waking from centuries of slumber. A voice emerged, not through the air but through the very ground, rumbling like a buried heartbeat. "Son, mother, why do you call?" Saul lowered her head respectfully. "My child was stolen, taken into the forest. I seek your memory, your roots, your wisdom." The tree groaned again, leaves trembling faintly. "We felt a flicker long ago, a young flame swallowed by shadow. We could not speak then. The roots were confused. The forest was divided. Divided?" Saul asked, frowning. "By what?" "By curiosity and fear. By Velnias's wandering. He twisted paths, moved stones, borrowed shadows. Even we could not see clearly." Saul's hands tightened around the reins. Even the trees, ancient and all-seeing in their slow, patient way, had been deceived. Velnias's mischief had woven a maze that even roots could not follow. "Can you sense him now?" she asked softly. "My son? Any fragment of his light?" The tree was silent for a long moment. Wind rustled through its leaves, though Vages was far away. Then faintly, "Yes, deep below, near water, but distant from day. A place where the earth remembers sorrow." Saul's heart ached. That could describe many places in a world shaped by ancient cycles, but she trusted the tree's instinct. "Thank you," she whispered, placing her hand upon its bark. "Your guidance narrows my path." The tree sagged slightly, settling back into its timeless dream. "Find the one who rules the dark rivers, the one who knows every hidden pool and every forgotten spring. He walks between yours and Velnias's realms. He will know the way." Saul's eyes widened. Of course. The next ally she needed was not of the sky or the forest, but of the water. Lemingas, keeper of the shadowed streams. He was a strange spirit, neither wholly kind nor cruel. A wandering figure who drifted along riversides and lingered beside deep pools, always half draped in mist. Stories said he had once been a mortal who sought wisdom in the hidden waters, between worlds, and returned changed, thin, spectral, and brimming with secrets. If Sauliukas had been hidden near water, Lemingas would know. Saul guided her chariot downward, descending toward a quiet glade where a river curved like a silver snake through the grass. Mist clung to the surface, swirling gently as if stirred by invisible hands. And there, seated on a boulder with his feet submerged in the current, was Lemingas. His form shimmered faintly, almost transparent at the edges, as though he were more reflection than being. His eyes were pale and distant, like someone who had seen far too many truths and now lived halfway inside them. When Saul approached, his head lifted slowly. "Sun Queen," he murmured, voice soft and echoing, like sound heard through water. "Your glow disturbs the river's memories." "I need your help," Saul said gently. "Long ago, my son was taken. Recently, I heard his voice, faint but alive. The trees say he is near water, somewhere deep, somewhere sorrowful." Lemingas blinked, and the river stilled around his ankles. "The sorrowful waters," he whispered, eyes drifting. "There's only one place that fits such a description." "Tell me," Saul breathed. Lemingas hesitated, fear flickering in his gaze, a rare sight for a spirit so accustomed to strangeness. "There is a hidden lake," he said softly. "A lake beneath the roots of the world. A lake Velnias visits when he wishes to hide what he values most. Not even the rivers flow freely there. Not even the moon touches it." Saul felt her light tremble with dread. "Show me the way," she said. "I can guide you." Laymingus whispered, "But you must know, if Velnias has kept your son there for this long, the magic binding him may be older than even you." Saul's eyes shone fiercely. "Then I will become older still." Laymingus gave a small, sad smile and stepped from the rock, his feet leaving no footprint on the grass. "Follow the current upstream," he said, "until the river narrows to a whisper. There you will find a crack in the earth, and behind that crack, a path no mortal should ever walk. But you are no mortal." The Sun Queen nodded and flicked the reins gently. Her horses surged forward, hooves splashing briefly through the river before lifting into the air. She followed the winding stream as it thinned, narrowing through reeds, then slipping between stones, then trickling into a quiet fissure in the hillside, barely noticeable, invisible to any eye that did not burn with determination. She descended from her chariot. The crack in the earth breathed cold air, damp and old. For the first time in many ages, Saul stepped away from her sky path and into darkness. Her glow dimmed, concentrated, drawn inward like a lantern shielded against wind. The passage ahead waited, silent, thick with secrets, heavy with Velnias's tricks, and somewhere deep within that darkness, her child waited too. The passage narrowed as Saul entered, its walls formed of twisted roots and damp stone. Her light stretched only a few steps ahead, swallowed eagerly by the hungry dark. It was a strange sensation for the Sun Queen. She was accustomed to wide horizons, to open skies, to the sweep of her chariot through endless day. Here, the world pressed close around her, breathing cold air against her skin, as though testing her resolve. She walked steadily, each step quiet, purposeful. Her glow dimmed not because it weakened, but because she willed it inward, shaping her radiance into a tighter sphere, so she would not blind herself in tight quarters. The tunnel curved gently, like a burrow carved by some ancient creature. Roots dangled from above, their tips dripping with cool droplets that hissed softly when they touched her warmth. Far behind her, the familiar comfort of the sky faded into memory. Ahead lay the domain of earth, water, and old magic. She was moving into a place where her nature held no dominion. But she kept going, because love weighed heavier than fear. After a time impossible to measure, minutes or centuries, she could not tell, the tunnel widened. Saul stepped into a cavern vast enough to contain mountains. Her glow spread across the space in a trembling wave, lighting stone pillars that rose like ribs of an ancient beast. Pools of dark water dotted the ground, their surfaces so still they appeared to be sheets of polished onyx. And at the far end, half concealed by dripping stalactites, a waterfall poured soundlessly into a deep basin. The water had no shimmer, no reflection. It was darkness in liquid form. She knew instantly where she was. The lake of buried light, a place forbidden even to gods, a place where the earliest sorrows of the world collected like sediment, a place Velnias had claimed as his refuge, his hoard of forgotten things. Saul steadied herself, letting her breath flow out slowly. She approached the lake's edge, careful not to disturb the silence. Here, even a whisper felt sacrilegious. The air changed. It thickened, pressing against her shoulders and chest, resisting her presence. She sensed old magic coiling in the shadows, magic forged in an age where boundaries between realms were fluid and the world was still choosing its shape. Then the surface of the lake rippled, not with wind. There was none here, not with current. The water was still as death. It rippled because something below stirred. Saul's heart lurched, her light flaring instinctively. She stepped closer, gripping the edge of her cloak with trembling fingers. For a moment, she feared it might be Velnias returning to protect what he had stolen. But then she heard it, a faint sound, a breath, weak, strained, but familiar. Mother. Her entire body froze. The world seemed to tilt, her mind a whirl of disbelief and fierce hope. She knelt instantly at the water's edge, her glow brightening until gold light caressed the darkness. "Sauliukas," she whispered, voice trembling. The lake answered with another ripple, and faintly. So faintly she feared the cavern might be fooling her. A small patch of the water began to glow from beneath. Soft gold rose from the depths, like a candle's flicker beneath the thick veil. Her child, held somewhere below the surface, alive. but bound. Saul reached into the water, but her fingers recoiled the moment they touched it. Not because it was cold. She had touched cold seas and winter storms without flinching, but because the lake resisted her. It pushed her away with a force deeper than physical, as though rejecting sunlight itself. She pressed forward again, and again the dark repelled her touch. Something ancient muttered beneath the water, a groan of magic long asleep, but stirred by her presence. She narrowed her eyes. Velnias had not merely hidden Sauliukas here. He had bound him with spells woven from sorrow and silence, spells that fed on despair and stagnation. A cage of stillness. Saul lifted both hands, gathering light into her palms. For a moment, the cavern bloomed with brilliance, but the lake's surface only darkened further, swallowing the glow instead of yielding to it. Her magic slid across it like rain on stone. The bindings were older than her radiance, older than even some gods. She needed another way. Saul stood slowly, scanning the cavern. Her light stretched across stone walls textured with ancient carvings, languages forgotten, runes eroded by time, symbols she only half recognized. Some warned of danger. Others spoke of bargains, rules, thresholds not meant to be crossed. And then she saw it. Etched into the wall near the lake was a symbol of two intertwined paths, one of light, one of shadow, meeting at a single crossing point. She stepped toward it. The closer she moved, the clearer it became. A riddle, a reminder of the old balance. Darkness could hold what light could not. Light could free what darkness feared. But to enter a realm of shadow, even briefly, one had to dim willingly, surrendering the very essence that defined them. A terrifying idea, a dangerous one, but it was also a way. Saul touched the symbol with trembling fingers. Stone pulsed faintly beneath her skin, acknowledging her decision even before she fully made it. To reach her child, she would have to let her light die. Not fully, not permanently, but enough to become part of the darkness, enough to slip beneath the surface, enough to break the ancient spell through contrast, not force. Her horses stirred somewhere above the cavern ceiling, sensing her fear. They whinnied softly, hooves scraping as they shifted anxiously in the sky paths she had abandoned. Saul closed her eyes, sending them a silent reassurance. Mother would return, she promised. She would always return, but first she must dim. She stepped again to the water's edge. The glow around her contracted, shrinking inward as though retreating beneath her skin. Shadows crept closer, emboldened. Her golden hair dulled to the pale yellow of dawn just before sunrise. Her eyes dimmed, their fire cooling to warm amber. She felt lighter, strangely vulnerable, as though her body were losing substance. The cavern watched in reverent silence. Saul placed her hands over her heart. Then she spoke 3 words that had not been uttered since the beginning of time. Let darkness in. Her light collapsed inward, not extinguished, but folded tight into a single glowing ember at the center of her chest. The cavern plunged into near darkness. For the first time in ages, Saul felt cold. She stepped into the lake. The surface did not resist her now. It welcomed her like a doorway opening. The dark water enveloped her legs, her waist, her shoulders. When it rose above her head, she did not drown. She simply passed through the barrier between realms, sinking deeper into a silence so absolute it became a presence of its own. Her feet touched soft sand. She was standing in a different world, a realm beneath the water, a world without sky, where everything moved in slow waves of gray and black. Trees made of shadow rose from the lakebed. The ground glowed faintly, as if remembering light that once touched it. Saul pressed forward, guided by a thread of gold shining weakly in the distance. Her child, she followed the thread through the submerged grove, weaving between shadow trees, whose branches brushed against her arms like half-remembered dreams. The deeper she moved, the stronger the glow became, but so did something else. A presence. Velnias, not physically, but in essence. His magic curled along the roots and stones, snarling like a territorial beast. It pushed against Saul, warning her to leave. Her dimmed light flickered. For a moment, fear threatened to overtake her. Then she saw him, Sauliukas. He lay curled within the trunk of a drowned shadow tree, its bark wrapped around him like a shell. Golden light seeped through cracks, pulsing faintly, too faintly. His face was pale, his radiance reduced to a fragile glimmer. His small hands were folded against his chest, as though protecting the last spark of himself. Saul reached for the tree. A surge of darkness slammed into her, trying to throw her back. She staggered but did not fall. Her love burned hotter than fear. She pressed her hand against the bark again. This time she whispered his name, Saulukas. A faint stir, a whisper of breath. Mother. The darkness snarled, tightening its grip. Saul leaned closer, pressing her forehead to the bark. Open, she said softly. He does not belong to you. The tree trembled, conflicted. Velnias's magic pressed it to obey the spell. But Saul's touch, gentle, warm even in its dimmed state, whispered of dawns, of growing things, of all the life the tree itself had once shaded long ago. It split. Light exploded outward in a muted bloom, lifting grains of sand from the lake bed. Saul reached into the cracked trunk and pulled her child into her arms. He was weightless, trembling, his glow flickering like a candle in wind. She held him close, pressing her cheek to his hair. Her light, though dim, flowed into him in gentle waves, warming him slowly. Sauliuka stirred, eyes opening just enough to reveal soft golden irises. You came, he whispered. I would cross every darkness in the world for you, she said. But before she could rise, a voice reverberated through the realm. Well, Velnias murmured from everywhere at once. Isn't this a touching scene? Saul tightened her hold, lifted her gaze, and prepared to face the spirit who had stolen her child. Velnias's presence slithered like smoke through the submerged grove, a voice that could sound like a laugh and like a sigh at the same time. You always were clever, Saul, brighter than most, warmer than some. But you forget that shadows remember differently. You thought you could simply step into my lake and take what I treasure? How naive. Saul hugged Sauliukas tighter, feeling his pulse flutter beneath her ribs like a fledgling bird. Her dimmed light steadied into a thin, resolute thread. You took him, she said plainly. Return him. Velnias's laughter was gentle and curious, as if testing which words would sting most. Taken. Oh no, I borrowed. I keep things that wander into places they do not belong. It is what I do. I collect what the world discards, what the world forgets. Your little son wandered where he should not. He wanted to see what lived beneath the roots. He wanted to understand the places that do not catch light. I gave him a lesson. Saul's stomach tightened. Lessons do not last forever when they break children. Velnias hummet amusit. You are a mother. You see the world in absolutes. You think everything can be mended with warmth. But I am older than your certainty. I keep the balance of curiosity and caution. Children who wander without learning cost the world less when they are taught to stay. Besides, his tone shifted sly. Don't you see? I have kept him safe. In my world, nothing moves too quickly. He will not be burned by the sun. He will learn patience. Saul's voice softened, but it held steel. He will learn many things with me, patience included. Return what is not yours. Velnias's reply was a slow, contemplative murmur. Return? Why should I return him to you when you have kept the world in a cycle of taking and giving? You, who sends light across fields and melts the rivers, do you not also take? You take the coolness from the soil, the mystery from the night. You take the stillness of the stars, all that has been given to you by 1,000 small, patient things. Saul's breath caught. There was truth in his words, truth that hurt because it was true. The sun takes. It consumes as it nurtures. She had always thought of herself as a giver, but the earth and shadow had their own claims. Still, her child's pulse under her hand showed her one clear fact. Whatever the arguments, Sauliukas belonged with her now. I will bargain, she said finally steady, if you will let him go. Velnias hummed again, curious like a fox. A bargain. How novel. Tell me, bright mother, what can a son offer to a keeper of darkness? Your light loses meaning here. Saul closed her eyes a moment, drawing breath from the very depths of her dimmed being. Bargains in the old world were not mere trades. They were exchanges of essence, of memory, of vows sealed with the weight of consequence. She could not barter away the hours of day, nor could she give up her light entirely. But she could offer something else, something that would change the pattern of days in small, almost unnoticed ways. What I can give, she said softly, is a promise. I will teach my children to remember the dark. I will ask the sky to listen, to learn that not every corner should be flooded with light at once. I will weave in the rhythm of pause, longer nights for the forests, cool shadows for the rivers, breath between the seasons. Velnia's voice trailed, intrigued. You would bind your glory to the slow and the quiet. You would teach your light to forget sometimes. Not forget, she corrected. Balance. To understand that growth needs rest. That curiosity should meet care. I will make a small change. Once each year, I will let the world keep a night longer, a waiting time before dawn in certain places. The rivers and the roots will have their hush. The stones and the old trees will hold memories without being washed away by morning. In return, you release my son. Velnias was silent long enough that Saul could hear the water breathe. At last he sighed, a sound like wind turning in a hollow. A poetic solution, but bargains must be fair in ways beyond sentiment. What proof do I have that you will keep such a vow? The sun is a promise the world depends upon. If you trade away even a sliver of that rhythm, it can unravel folk songs, calendars, the very idea of time for some. Saul opened her eyes, and in that gaze was the weight of seasons. Then bind it, she said. Seal it with the same power you used to keep my son. Make it a pact written into the bones of the world. Mark the places where the night must stay longer. Mark them in stone, in riverbeds, in the roots. Let it become a law of the land. I will honor it as long as I draw breath. I will teach my children what you teach mine. In return, Saliukas. Velnias chuckled, the sound like pebbles sliding. To seal bargains into rock requires more than words. It requires a witness. Saul looked around the submerged grove, then up toward the faint dimness where the surface met the cavern above. The water shimmered where the world of light and the world of shadow met. There, like a thread caught between two hands, the line of balance lay. Then call one, she said. Velnias' voice slipped into every little corner at once, and the water in the lake swelled, forming a column that rose toward the ceiling like an inverted pillar. The air above the surface trembled as if listening. From the heights where Saul had come, a sound answered a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the bones. Vages, the wind, and Leymingus, the river-keeper, and the world grove itself, all felt the surge. Even the stones underfoot hummed. Velnias allowed a smile. Very well. A witness. Saul extended her hand. The ember of light still nestled in her chest, and reached out toward the child in her arms. The pact they struck was not made of ink or of human things. It was an exchange of essences, of vows and boundaries. Velnias called upon the cavern's ancient magic and etched, with invisible fingers, a bond into the underside of the world. The trees pressed their roots down, absorbing the promise. The rivers pledged to remember the hush. The wind agreed to carry word that certain nights would be longer where it mattered most. In the midst of that binding, the ember of solace light flared, not outward, but within, touching Saliukas in a way that felt like a mother's hand stroking a feverish brow. The bargain sealed. Velnias sighed, a sound that was not cruelty but weary satisfaction. Your offer is curious, and perhaps wise, he said. I accept. He stepped forth from the shadows then, not as a towering terror, but as a small, wiry figure with two bright eyes, like an old man who never quite learned to keep his hands from touching things. Up close he smelled of moss and cold water and old leaves. He bowed with mock formality. Take your child, bright mother. Saul rose, lifting Saliukas toward the surface. The submerged world pushed against her as she moved. The pact had bound her in new ways, and the water seemed to recognize it, pressing gently as though guiding her. She walked back toward the opening of the lake, each step heavier than the last, but easier for the knowledge that her son was at her side. When she broke the surface, the cavern exhaled. Light returned not as flame, but as a gradual bloom. Saul felt the warmth return to her face, like a benediction. Above, her horses neighed in release, their hooves quickening as if pleased. The ceiling of the grotto opened to the sky. A sliver of dawn had crested the horizon. The world was, in small and crucial ways, different. She mounted her chariot without ceremony, Soliukas wrapped against her chest. He blinked against the light, his radiance thickening like the first clear morning. He clutched her with a child's small hands, fingers digging into the gold of her cloak. "Mother," he murmured again, but there was new clarity in his voice now, something like understanding forged by hardship. "I saw so much. The dark has its own songs." Saul smiled, and the smile held both mercy and admonition. "Then bring those songs back to the children of light," she said. "Teach them to listen. Teach them to wait. Be my messenger." Soliukas nodded, his face serious in a way that made Saul's heart ache. She wrapped him close and turned the chariot toward the east, toward the path of the day. The horses rose into the air, taking the measured climb that had felt so natural to her for ages. As they emerged from the cavern and the light claimed the world, Saul felt the subtle newness settle into place. It was like a thread sewn into an old garment, barely visible to most, but altering the strength and fit of the whole. News of her bargain traveled in small ways. The first year after the pact, some places felt an extra hush before dawn, a fragment of night that lingered like a held breath. Farmers who rose early swore their barns woke a touch cooler, and the dew lingered longer on the crops. Fish took pause in deeper pools. Old oaks seemed to breathe slower. Most people noticed nothing at all. Some sang of softer mornings. Over time, the memory of those longer nights wove into folk customs, festivals that honored patience, songs that taught children the value of stillness. Velnias watched all this with an amused, unsettled expression, finding the world's new rhythms interesting to observe. For Saul, the bargain had cost her not the blaze of day, but a lesson in humility. She had learned that giving could involve holding back, that warmth could be tempered with pause, and that her light was more precious when it recognized the places where dark must rest. Soliukas grew, as children do, into his nature. He kept a part of the cave within him, a longing for listening, a patient curiosity that made him linger at the edge of shadows rather than rush past them. He became a small guardian of twilight, a spirit who taught fishermen when to wait, who told children the names of stars that only appeared when dawn delayed its approach. People still felt his presence as a small extra warmth at the edge of morning, a reminder that not every question must be answered at once. The world, in turn, adjusted. The balance between haste and slowness, between light and hush, became a new kind of rhythm that gave space for roots to remember and rivers to breathe. Songs were written about the bargain. Mothers taught children to listen to both the sun and the shadow. The forests pruned themselves differently, and the people learned slowly to plant with a patient hand. And Loki, his story, told in a very different land and by a different people, carried its own lessons. But here in the Baltic lands, the tale of Saul and Soliukas became one of the oldest parables about love that bends and bargains that change the world. It reminded listeners that even the brightest beings could be taught by the smallest of sorrows, that mothers could be fierce negotiators, and that sometimes the protection of a child required more than heat. It required humility. In the quiet nights that followed, when the stars arched with an unfamiliar serenity and the winds whispered of old bargains, people would point to the east and say, in voices hushed with reverence, "There rides Saul, the Sun Queen, who learned to listen, and there shines Soliukas, teaching us to wait." And though the sky remained luminous and the days long, there were corners where the night lingered a little longer, where the earth kept its secrets a little while yet. In those places, seeds dreamed patiently beneath the hush, rivers remembered their sources, and the world, in a fragile, human way, learned what it meant to give space for growth. So the tale spread, through gatherings around fires, through songs hummed during harvest, through stories passed between mothers and children, and it reached listeners who were far away from the Baltic coasts. They carried it like a small lamp, using its warmth to guide them through their own shadows. And in every telling, the story did what all good tales do. It changed a little, shaped by the hands that told it, but never losing the heart of what mattered. Saul's bargain endured, not as a single edict carved into a cold stone, but as a living, breathing pattern woven into how people move through the year. It reminded them that light gives best when it also knows how to wait, that curiosity should meet caution, and that sometimes the most dangerous act of all, the one that could undo the world, was not taking, but refusing to listen to what had been hidden for reasons older than speech. In that way, the Baltic world held its breath and exhaled into a slow, patient rhythm, its people tending fields and children, listening to both dawn and dusk. And Saul, who once thought herself a giver alone, learned the quiet power of restraint. She rose each day as she always had, her chariot bright, her horses steady, but now she carried a small shadow inside her light, a memory of a lake and a bargain and a child who taught the sun to wait. So when the mornings feel softer, or when a harvest seems to ripen just a touch later than you expect, remember the bargain. Remember that even the sun yields sometimes, not out of weakness, but out of love. Remember that light and dark can be partners, not enemies, that in the meeting of their ways, life learns its most valuable lessons. And if ever you find yourself standing at the edge of a pool that refuses to reflect, or walking beside a tree that keeps its own counsel, think of Saul stepping into the lake. Think of a mother who would dim herself for the sake of her son, and, in doing so, change the rhythm of the world. That is the promise the old stories leave us, that even the greatest lights can learn from the quietest shadows, and that the truest kind of warmth is one that knows when to hold back so life can grow in the hush.